How many cranial nerves are there? 12. Good. And for this one, let's just name them for now, right? Because for this branch, we have to know the functions as well, right? So let's just name them and like get used to what their Roman numeral looks like. So for this one, it would look like, here, I'm gonna move this and maybe shrink that one. And we'll do like a big thing. All right, so let's just write out the Roman numerals. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 is 5, but like with the 1 in front. That's 5. 6 is that. 7, 8, 9 is that. 10, 11, 12. So that's what the Roman numerals look like. And let's just name the cranial nerves. What's the first cranial nerve? Good, the olfactory nerve. The second one? Optic. The third? Good, oculomotor. The fourth? Trochlear. The fifth? Good, trigeminal. The sixth? Good, abducens. 7? Facial. 8? Vestibulocochlear, good. 9? Glossopharyngeal. 10? Vagus. 11? 12. Good. All right. And then later on, you can expand onto that, right? And you can start adding in the functions and the modalities. Is this a somatic motor cranial nerve, or like only, or does it also carry sensory information? And what type of sensory information? Is it somatosensory information, or is it special sensory, or is it visceral sensory, right? So you can add that on later. And then for the spinal nerves, how many are there? Exactly, right? 31 pairs, good. So here, for cranial nerves, we'll say 12 pairs. Spinal nerves, 31 pairs. And this one's easy because it's the same as the spinal cord segments, right? So 1, 2, how many cervical? 8. How many thoracic? 12 lumbar? 5 sacral? 5 coccygeal? 1, good. Here, cervical. How about we just, all right. And then coming off of here, I think we should talk about like, because the spinal nerves are only those short little segments, right? What's the name of the neural tissue before the spinal nerve? Like, name all the bits of neural tissue before the spinal nerve. Like coming off the spinal cord, what do you call those small roots? Rootlets. And then what's after the rootlets? The roots. And then what's after the roots? Good. But what kind of nerves?
Oh, it's a mix both.
Spinal nerves. And then what's after the spinal nerve? The two branches. One goes anterior, one goes posterior.
So there's anterior ramus and dorsal ramus.
Exactly, the anterior and the posterior rami, exactly. So on this, you can say something like, we're running out of room here, but like the idea is you can make some diagram where it's like, okay, like rootlets, and then roots, and then like one of these, like one of the spinal nerves, And then what? What's after the spinal nerve? Right, the rami, the anterior and the posterior rami. So let's follow the anterior rami, anterior ramus. Because what comes off of the anterior ramus? There's different types of nerves. This one I'll just explain it to you because this is autonomic nervous system. Coming off the anterior ramus, there's, we call them, well, let's split it up like this. These are called the white and gray communicating rami. For the sympathetic nervous system, so the anterior ramus gives off these bits of neural tissue. This is the name of them, right? The white communicating ramus and the gray communicating ramus. And then those are going into a ganglion, but these are nerves, so we're not naming that. And then coming out of that sympathetic ganglion is something called, you probably don't have to know this, but for completeness, we're just gonna put this here. Some of your instructors talk about the splanchnic nerves. Splanchnic. Just write it down for now, and maybe your instructor will talk about it, maybe not. But once we go over the autonomic nervous system, you're going to be like, what is that thing coming off medially? And that's what it is. It's called a splanchnic nerve. It's a sympathetic nerve, basically.
What's those other two notches?
Say it again.
Is it the other two notches on the root? Because you have the dorsal. I might be getting it confused.
Can we?
Talking about the sympathetic ramus, I think. So,
Can I show you once? Can I show you once we start doing the diagrams?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Sorry. Yeah.
Is the anterior ramus sympathetic or parasympathetic? Is that what that's?
Yeah. Coming off the anterior ramus, there can be sympathetic nerves or parasympathetic nerves. And let's just leave it at that, actually. Just call them that. Coming off the anterior ramus, we're just trying to account for all of the nerves. We have to account for the autonomic nerves, too. So coming off the anterior ramus are the autonomic nerves, sympathetic, parasympathetic. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, there's also ganglia. Cranial ganglia, let's not talk about them. And then there's spinal ganglia. What's the name of the ganglia that are immediately adjacent to the spinal cord, lateral to the spinal cord? They contain the cell bodies of unipolar neurons.
These are posterior ganglion.
Right, so the posterior or dorsal root ganglion. Right, that's a ganglion associated with the spinal cord. But then there's also autonomic ganglia. And then what are the two divisions of the autonomic nervous system?
Sympathetic or parasympathetic?
Good.
Will we ever talk about cranial ganglions? No?
Your instructors might mention them, but probably not. Yeah.
We're just asking for the space.
Sympathetic. Oops. And the sympathetic ganglia, what happened to that one? The sympathetic ganglia, there's two types. What are the names of the two types of sympathetic ganglia? on the spinal cord, on the wall model, what's the name of that chain lateral to the spinal cord? Oh, that was this week. That spinal cord wall, make sure you look at that. It's called the sympathetic chain. So it has sympathetic chain ganglia, right? So another name for those, they're called paravertebral ganglia, because they're next to, alongside the vertebral column, these ganglia. But then you have ganglia for the sympathetic nervous system that are like immediately anterior to the vertebral column. So they're called prevertebral ganglia. And the other name for the, here, let me write the other names in parentheses. So paravertebral, that's also sympathetic chain ganglia, that's also ganglia. These ones are also called collateral ganglia. So some of your instructors might use those terms. And then the parasympathetic nervous system has two types of ganglia. They're called terminal and intramural. Like the sports. Or is that intramural or is that intramural? Inter? Oh, yeah. How is that the same as? Intra means within and mural means, wall. Okay, so like within the walls of the university or something. I never thought about that. Huh, yeah, that's a good association. Nice. Yeah, so that's what intramural means, within the walls. So these ganglia are within the walls of the organs. The terminal ganglia are like right outside the walls. Here, for this one over here, here it's more like, this is like going here, but like to this one too, potentially. And yeah, it's traveling through like an anterior ramus. Let's just call these nerves. Parasympathetic nerves, that's fine. Okay. So that's all the stuff in the nervous system pretty much. Well, not all the stuff, because you can go further in each one of these categories, right? But I think this is a good way to start. If you can recall this from memory, then it's like everything's a multiple choice question, you know? Because you already know where everything is, right? You know what spinal nerves are. You know what spinal cord segments are. You know the 4 parts of the brain. You know that the nervous system also has an autonomic part, sympathetic, parasympathetic, right? So if you can do this, generate this from memory, then that's a useful thing, I think. Okay, let's do this other one. And let's just do it really quickly, right? Because it's also useful to understand the nervous system's functional organization, because we're talking about motor and sensory and sympathetic, parasympathetic. That's usually really confusing for a lot of students. So let's try to make it easier. So the way it works is, here. What are the two divisions, the functional divisions of the nervous system? Good. What are the different types of sensory modalities? There's at least 3. Well, let's name 3. What do you call the senses that come from like the skin and the muscles. Good, general. Here, how about this? Let's call them somatic. It's also called general. What about the ones coming from the organs, like the heart, right? Visceral. Let's call this one autonomic. What about the ones coming from like some of the organs in the head, like the eyes and the ears? Good, special.
Is it autonomic, you mean like, senses from your organs?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Here, is that confusing? Should we talk about that, or does that make sense? Senses from your organs? So it's like tension, wall tension, or the concentration of some solute or ion, like sodium or hydrogen ions or something like that. Those are visceral senses. So that's what this is talking about, visceral or autonomic senses. Let's break that down a little further, actually. So, never mind. It's not physiology. Yeah, never mind. I don't think it'll be that useful. There's other things to cover. Okay? And then what are the two branches of the motor system? Yes, somatic. And it's the same. The first two are the same for the motor, as the sensory. Autonomic. Right, which is visceral. What's the effector for a somatic motor, for the somatic motor neuron? Good. And then what are the two divisions of the autonomic nervous system?
Glands and
Good. Sympathetic, parasympathetic. That's what they innervate. Yes, that's the next question. So what are the effectors?
glands and cardiac muscle.
Okay, good. Cardiac muscle, glands, and which other muscle? Good. Smooth muscle.
This is all still motor.
Correct.
Okay.
They both do that?
They both do that. Yeah. What's the difference then? If they both do that, like what's the sympathetic nervous system doing in general? Like what's the other name for the sympathetic nervous system?
That's fight or flight.
Fight or flight, right? So it's like when the sympathetic nervous system is activated, to the cardiac muscle, it's gonna make it so that you can fight or flee. So it's going to increase the heart rate, right? Versus the parasympathetic nervous system, what's the nickname for the parasympathetic nervous system? Rest and digest. So it's gonna slow down the heart rate because you don't need to fight or flee. You need to rest and digest, right? And so that's the difference between these two divisions of the autonomic nervous system. They either increase or decrease the rate of activity of organs, visceral organs. Okay. And then, sorry, I think we should talk about these ones over here because we talked about the effectors, where the signal is going, but how did the signal start? And we talked about some of these when we did the integumentary system. So let's just talk about it. So name some of the cutaneous receptors that you learned about in the integumentary system. right? Pacinian corpuscle, Meissner's corpuscles, free nerve endings, good. So it's like, we can say cutaneous receptors, right? That's like one form of the general sensation or somatic sensation, somatosensation. What's the other like type? What's the other somatosensation modality? So we just said that for the cutaneous receptors, that includes Pacinian corpuscle, free nerve endings, Meissner's corpuscle. The functions of those were to detect touch, vibration, temperature, pain, right? What about, there's one more sensation, okay, stretch, right? So which, where is stretch being detected? Oh, you mean like stretch within the skin? Sorry, think about like how do I know that my hand is above my head versus like now it's level with my head versus like it's beneath my head now? What's the word for that? Good, proprioception. But like where is that sensation coming from? It's coming from like receptors in your muscles. So like the Golgi tendon organ or the intrafusal muscle fibers. Do you remember learning about those in the muscle, the skeletal muscle system? No?
There's like small muscles that are identifying the position in the space.
Exactly. That's what they're,
What they called it. I think we went over it with you, but not really in the lab.
not in lecture?
I don't think so.
Not even, oh, what about like the last, maybe not the last unit, but like 2 units ago when we did muscles, did you guys learn about like within the muscle belly, there's like muscle fibers that don't contract. They're sending sensory information to the nervous system. You guys didn't learn about that? Oh, really? Okay.
But I think you were mentioned in that part. That's the first time I heard the proprioception term.
Oh, yeah? Okay. Well, then you're learning for the first time now. Yes. Here, so let's finish this off. So let's call them muscle receptors,
Oh, that is.
right? Right, so that's for like proprioception, right? That's why somatosensation is like touch, pain, temperature, vibration, proprioception, right? Because it's coming from these receptors versus, and then Ali, you had a question about like this, like a visceral sense. So these ones are, so like chemoreceptors. So there's like dendrites that are in the organs, in contact with the fluid, and they're sensing things like sodium concentration or the pH, right? The pH of your blood needs to be very regulated, otherwise proteins can denature. Carbon dioxide concentration to control your rate of ventilation, right? All of this is considered visceral sensory information, right? That you're not aware of most of the time, right? There's like nociceptors for pain, right? Pain is tissue damage, right? Excessive stretch, or if a cell dies because of a pathogen, the things that it leaks out can cause neurons to fire, right? Which means pain, right? Because that's tissue damage.
And OCI?
Sorry, this word is really sorry, hold on. So noci is pain, and scepter is receptor but shortened. So this is the actual name. This is my abbreviation. So a pain receptor, a nociceptor. There's a mechanoreceptors for like the degree of tension in the wall of the organ, like your stomach. Like how do you know when to stop eating? Well, or how do you know when to go pee? You know, when your bladder gets full. Well, you have nerves that are sensing the degree of stretch of those organs, and that information is also like visceral sensory. And then you have special senses. These ones are different than somatic or autonomic because these ones are coming from different types of receptors, right? Like photoreceptors in the retina, right? Or chemoreceptors like in the nose or in the tongue, right? For smell and taste. But these chemoreceptors are different than the other ones in the body, right? So like that's what's happening. That's how some stimulus is being transduced by a receptor, and then it travels through these nerves, through the sensory division of the nervous system to the central nervous system. So it's like, this is like the PNS, and then it's processed in the CNS, and then it leaves. A motor signal leaves through the PNS, and it can go through the somatic division or the autonomic division. If it goes through somatic, it's going to skeletal muscle. If it's going through autonomic, it's going to cardiac muscle, glands, or smooth muscle. And if it goes through the sympathetic division, it's going to alter these effectors in a way that it increases your ability to fight or flee. And if it goes through parasympathetic, it's going to increase your ability to rest and digest, right? Okay. Any questions? Did you have a question, Anna?
So many.
Okay.
The one that is special senses,
Mhm.
is it like photoreceptors?
Yeah.
Chemoreceptors?
Sorry,
Not
yeah.
like nociceptor thing.
Yeah, this is, photoreceptor.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just
R
wanted to be sure.
equals receptor. Mm. Okay, good? Yeah.
Under the autonomic, because I can't see that over there,
Mhm.
we're gonna put the parasympathetic and sympathetic.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, so, was it not? Yeah, so autonomic, its two divisions that we're talking about are sympathetic, parasympathetic. Okay. All right, so that was a lot of organization, but I think it's hard to understand the nervous system without like getting that overview first. Okay. All right, so let's just run through everything now. So here's the central nervous system, and what are the two components of the central nervous system? Good, the brain and the spinal cord. What are the four parts of the brain? What is this part? Good, the cerebrum or the telencephalon. This part? Good, the diencephalon. This part? The cerebellum. And then all of this? Good, the brainstem. But the brainstem has more parts. What is this part?
Midbrain.
Good, the midbrain. This part? Good, the pons. This part? Good, the medulla oblongata. Good. And then here's the spinal cord. So the spinal cord has segments. How many segments are there? 31. How many cervical? 8. How many thoracic? Good. How many lumbar? 5. How many sacral? 5. How many coccygeal? Nice, good. You guys are on it. Nice, good. See how useful it is? All right. This one is, what was this one? You can also like divide the nervous system into the gray and the white matter. So that's another way to do it. So that's what this is doing, I think. It looks like this is the peripheral nervous system. So let's name all of the gray matter of the peripheral nervous system. What is the gray matter of the peripheral nervous system called? Right, so collections of subbodies in the peripheral nervous system are called what? Ganglia, good, right? So that's another way to think about it, right? And then there's different types of ganglia. What kind of ganglion is this? Good, the dorsal root ganglion. That's another name for it, spinal ganglion, but do what it says in the lab manual, dorsal root or posterior root ganglion. What about these ones coming off the brain?
Cranial nerves.
So the cranial nerves aren't gray matter. So it's got to be not the nerve, but what is this like? Good, a ganglion, right? But it's we can call it a cranial ganglion, right? When we're talking about ganglia, there's two types of ganglia. There's cranial ganglia and spinal ganglia. And then there's like two types of spinal ganglia, the dorsal root ganglion. And then what's the other type? Because that's what this is here. All of the other types of ganglia that are associated with automatic responses, right? Sympathetic or parasympathetic, so autonomic, right? Because, here, let's go.
This is lumbar. Oh, okay.
We said
Oh, yeah.
there's peripheral nervous system, there's ganglia. Okay, what kind of ganglia? Cranial and spinal. Let's not really talk about the cranial. Okay, what kind of spinal are there? Well, the posterior or dorsal root ganglion. Okay, what else? Autonomic ganglia. Well, what kind? Sympathetic and parasympathetic. Well, what kind of sympathetic? Well, there's paravertebral. Those are the sympathetic chain ganglia. And then there's prevertebral. Those are the collateral ganglia. And then there's also parasympathetic. So terminal ganglia, the ones that are close to the organ. Intramural are the ones that are actually in the wall of the organ, right? So going back, no, not that one, sorry. Right, so when you can see these ganglia in the body, right? But they're not dorsal root ganglia, they're not cranial ganglia, so they're autonomic ganglia. Right? There's two different types, sympathetic and parasympathetic, okay? The peripheral nervous system also has a bunch of white matter. Okay, what did they do here? Let's name number one. What is number one? Which rootlets?
Spinal rootlets? Anterior.
Good, anterior rootlets. So what is that? Anterior, oh no, not that one, sorry. It is that one. So they're saying that, okay, sure, this is the root. These are the rootlets. So anterior root, posterior root, anterior rootlets, posterior rootlets. What is this? Good, the spinal nerve, right? Because after the anterior and posterior rootlets is the posterior and anterior root, and then the spinal nerve, and then what's after the spinal nerve?
Anterior ramus.
Exactly, anterior ramus and posterior ramus, good. So these are like spinal nerves, right? But then there's also cranial nerves. How many cranial nerves are there?
12.
Good, 12, good. What did they say here? Oh yeah, they said, we won't talk about this. Well, maybe your instructor will, but we won't right now, right? Yep, okay, good. All right. Okay, let's go over the parts on a neuron. So, what is this?
Nucleolus.
Good, the nucleolus. Function?
Production of ribosome.
Production of ribosomes.
Okay, good. What about this one?
Nucleus.
Good, nucleus. Function?
Houses DNA.
Houses DNA. Good. Here? Cell body. Good. Function?
Integrates nerve impulse.
Okay, that's a good one. Integrates nerve impulses. Good. What about, I don't know, here?
Mitochondria.
Yeah,
Oh, missile bodies.
good. Nissl bodies. Good. They call it chromatophilic substance. Just ignore that, right? Do what it says in the lab manual. That's just another name for it. This is from McKinley, I think. What about these?
Dendrites.
Good. Dendrites. Here?
Axon helix.
Axon hillock. Good. Sorry, let's go back. What's the function of the Nissl bodies?
To produce proteins.
Okay, good. Because which organelle is it?
Ribosomes just clumped together.
Roughy-R, right? So it's ribosomes and the roughy-R, yes? Function for dendrites?
To be receptors to receive the nerve impulse.
Exactly, right? To receive the nerve impulse, just like the cell body, good. Yeah, the axon terminal, the synaptic knob can synapse on a dendrite or on the cell body. Other locations too, that maybe your instructor will mention. Okay, what about this thing?
Axon.
Good, the axon. Function of the axon? Good.
Propagate the nerve impulse?
Good. Propagates the nerve impulse, the action potential. Yes, good. What is this cell? Schwann cell. What's another name for it?
Neurolemocyte.
Good. The neurolemocyte. Good. Let's just name all the parts. What's this outer region, thin region of cytoplasm?
Neurolemma.
Good. The neurolemma. And then what about like deep to that? So like here.
Myelin sheath.
Good. The myelin sheath. So that's for sure myelin sheath. I don't know what they said for that one. Let's just, okay, there we go. And then what is this space?
Node of Ranvier.
Good. The node of Ranvier. What's another name for it? Good. A neurofibril node. Good. All right. What's the function of the neurolemocyte?
To basically wrap around the axon to create this myelin sheath made out of phospholipid bilayer.
Exactly, right. So to create the myelin sheath, which, how does that help the action potential,
By insulating it.
right? So it helps it go faster because
It's not interactive.
it's insulated, electrically insulated. Yep, good. And that's the same function for the myelin sheath, right? To electrically insulate the axon, right? And to speed up the velocity of the action potential. And then what are these?
Axon terminal. Synaptic node.
Yeah, synaptic knobs. Because I think axon terminal is, here they call them terminal arborizations, right? So we don't have to know that, but the idea is that like the very last branch, that's the axon terminal.
Okay.
And then at the end of the axon terminal is a swollen portion, that's called the synaptic knob. Yeah. Okay, good. What's the function of the synaptic knob?
To create a synapse with another.
Okay, to synapse with another neuron or another cell. Yes. What's inside of the synaptic knob? Like what?
Neurotransmitter.
Exactly, the neurotransmitter, right? That's probably the most important part, is that it's synapsing with another cell, but there's neurotransmitters in the synaptic knob that are released once the action potential reaches the synaptic knob. Okay, good. All right, what are the three morphologies of neurons? Like, which one is this?
This one is a
Multipolar.
Good, multipolar. Where do you find these ones in the body?
In the horns.
In the where?
In the posterior, anterior, and lateral horns.
Okay,
That's kind of part.
okay, yes. Sorry, can we, like, can you name all of the locations in the body where we can find multipolar neurons? To do this, let's just exclude the locations where the other types are found. So, which type is this? Good, bipolar. So where do you find these ones?
Retina or the ear.
Exactly, right? The special sense organs, right? Those are good examples. The retina, the ear, the cochlea, good. So not there. You don't find multipolar neurons there, right? What about this type of neuron?
Unipolar.
Good, unipolar neuron. Where do you find these ones?
The dorsal root ganglion.
Good, the dorsal root ganglion. So you don't find multipolar neurons in the dorsal root ganglion. So that's where you find multipolar neurons, right? Not the special sensory organs and not the dorsal root ganglion. Good? All right. And then, so those are neurons, but, here, sorry, let's name the other parts of these. What is this?
Dendrite.
Yeah, those are, I don't know actually, are those the dendrites? Yeah.
Isn't there like a pre-cell body dendrite, something, there's a name for it in the book.
Yeah, in your lab manual,
Just
I don't remember what it says in your lab manual, but for the unipolar neurons, some people call this the peripheral process, and this one the central process, but I don't think we're calling it that. So let's call these are for sure dendrites. What are we calling the entire thing?
Axon.
The axon, yeah. Okay, what is this?
Cell body.
The cell body, good. And all right, the other ones look the same.
Oh, no, that was something.
Is that,
All right.
do they call that an on the last slide, is that an axon hillock on the unipolar one too?
Oh, this?
Yeah.
No, they call it a single short process, or a central process. No, not central. There's another name for it that I don't remember, but that's what it's called. The axon hillock is,
Only on the multipolar?
yeah, because, only on the multipolar, well, or the bipolar. That's a good question, actually. Yeah, what is this one called? I don't know. All right. All right, what are the 4 glial cells of the central nervous system?
Astrocyte, ependymal, microglial cells.
Nice, good,
Oligodendrocytes.
good. Which one is this?
Astrocyte.
Good, astrocyte. These ones?
Ependymal cells.
Good, ependymal cells, so, okay. This one?
Microglia.
Good. Let's just uncover everything, that's fine. And this one?
Oligodendrocyte.
Good, an oligodendrocyte, good. All right, what's the function of the astrocyte? What are some functions of the astrocyte?
To build the blood-brain barrier.
Right, to form the blood-brain barrier, good. What does the blood-brain barrier do?
Keeps nasty shit from going to your brain.
Okay, good, right? So prevents certain things from entering into the extracellular fluid surrounding the neurons of the brain, good. What about the ependymal cells?
They either, in the brain, they are producing CSF, and in the spinal cord, they move in CSF.
Nice, good. And then where, good. And where in the brain are they producing the CSF?
In the ventricles.
Where in the ventricles?
Choroid plexus.
Or on the choroid plexus.
Good, yes, good. Sorry, I have to plug this in.
A choroid plexus, they need participation of the capillaries as well.
Correct. Yeah, that's what the choroid plexus is a bunch of capillaries that are lined by ependymal cells. Yep, good. Function for the microglial cells? Good, it's a macrophage, good. So it does the things that macrophages do. So it phagocytizes pathogens, good. What about the oligodendrocyte?
Produces the myelin sheath in the central nervous system.
Good, exactly. So it myelinates multiple axons versus just one axon for a Schwann cell. And so those are the 4 glial cells of the central nervous system. There's 2 glial cells of the peripheral nervous system. Which ones are these?
Satellite cells.
Good, satellite cells. And let's just, what is this?
This is
Unipolar.
the posterior root ganglion.
Good, the posterior root ganglion. What is, I don't know what they're asking for here. What kind of neuron is this structurally and functionally?
Unipolar.
Yep, unipolar,
Sensory neuron.
and it's a sensory neuron, good. So it's probably cell body of sensory neuron, okay. The rest of these are just things that we know.
What was the function of satellite cells?
Oh,
Support and protect.
How about
Yeah.
they regulate the exchange of nutrients and waste?
right, exactly. So regulates the exchange of nutrients and waste between the neuron and the extracellular fluid. That sounds similar to which glial cell of the central nervous system?
Astrocyte?
The astrocyte, yes. So this is like the astrocyte of the PNS, and then these are the oligodendrocytes of the PNS. So which cells are these?
Neuromocytes.
Good, the neurolemocytes, good. And then we did most of those on the other slide. Function for neurolemocyte?
You produce myelin sheath.
Right, yep, to produce the myelin sheath, to increase the velocity of the action potential, to prevent charge from leaking out of the axon, yes, all of that,
Is it
yes.
also protects the axon and potentially from potential trauma?
I don't think it protects it, but it can regenerate the axon if there is trauma, only if which structure is present of the neurolemma site. What is that thin rim of cytoplasm called? Like outside of the myelin sheath?
Oh, that's
The neurolemma, right? That's what the neurolemma does. It helps to regenerate the axon because it's cytoplasm. And what's in cytoplasm? All of the organelles, right? The nucleus, the mitochondria, the ribosomes. So that's how it's able to help regenerate the axon because it still has all of those like little bits of machinery. Yeah.
So Schwann cells and neurolemmocytes only make one myelin sheath.
Sorry, say it again. Schwann cells and say it again.
Schwann cells and neurolemmas only produce like one wrapper on one myelin sheath versus like the oligodendrocytes can like myelinate multiple.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so Schwann cell and neurolemmocyte, those words are synonymous. So a Schwann cell myelinates one axon, yes, but oligodendrocytes myelinate multiple axons.
Oh, and the other thing is the neurolemmocyte is PNS, where the dendrocyte, right?
Oligodendrocyte.
Oh, I got it right. Is CNS.
Good. Yes. Good. All right. All right, so here's some histology. You've probably seen some of these already. Which blood vessel is this?
Capillary.
Good, a capillary. What kind of cell is this?
Astrocytes.
Good. Which part of the astrocyte is this? The cell body. What is this?
The process.
A process.
The process of
Right.
astrocyte.
This is a process of the astrocyte. But then what's at the end of the process of the astrocyte?
Perivascular.
Good, the perivascular foot. Good. Okay. Function for astrocyte?
They form the blood-brain barrier.
Good. Forms blood-brain barrier. That's a good one. Good. Which organ is this?
Nerve.
A nerve. Good. What is this?
Axon.
Good. The axon. Here.
Myelin sheath.
Myelin sheath. What is this?
The Schwann cell. The nucleus of the neurolemmocyte.
Good. Nucleus of the Schwann cell. What is this? The blue.
The endoneurium.
Good. The endoneurium. Good. What if it was asking not the nucleus? If it was pointing to this and asking not for the nucleus, what would you say?
The neurolemma.
The neurolemma. Good. Okay. What is this?
Node of Ranvier.
Good. Node of Ranvier. What is this white?
Myelin sheath.
Good. The myelin sheath. What about this pink?
Axon.
Good. The axon. Good. Okay. What's the function of the node of Ranvier?
It's the site where sodium rushes in to the plasma membrane of the axon.
Okay. Good. So let's say its function is to regenerate the action potential, something like that. Yep. Good. All right. What about? Well, we did most of these already. Okay. Let's keep going. All right. So here's cross section of spinal cord. What is this?
Posterior root ganglion.
Good. Posterior root ganglion. What is this?
Anterior root.
Good. Anterior root. Here. Good.
Posterior rootlet.
Yeah, it's kind of tough to tell, but this is probably posterior root. Yeah, because it's like it's all together, but here it looks more spread out.
Okay.
Okay. Here.
This is the dura mater.
Good. The dura mater. Good.
Oh, look at that.
Good. All right. What is this blue zone?
This is the posterior horn.
Good. The posterior horn. This purple zone.
Anterior horn.
Good. The anterior horn. This black zone. Good. The gray commissure.
Great commissure.
Good. Gray commissure. Good. What types of axons do you find synapsing in the posterior horn?
Somatic.
Um,
Sensory, yeah.
Right, okay, so sensory axons, good. And then what are the, like, two types of sensory that can be synapsing here in the posterior horn?
Somatic and visceral.
Good, somatic and visceral. Good. Not the third type of sensory. What's the third type of sensory?
Special.
Good. Not that one because those are located where? Like, where are the special senses located?
Like in the specific areas, like in the retina.
Right.
Here.
Okay, good. So like the head. Maybe think of it like
Oh, okay.
the head versus like the torso, right? Because those are special senses. So there's no like posterior horn in the head, right? Because there's no spinal cord in the head. So think of it like that. The only thing synapsing here is all sensory except for special sensory, right? And then those axons are synapsing onto what types of neurons? Interneurons, good. And then what types of neurons structurally are interneurons?
Multipolar.
Multipolar, good. What types of neurons are present in the anterior horn?
Motor neurons.
Okay, motor neurons, good. But what kind of motor neurons?
Somatic.
Good, somatic motor neurons, right? That means that they're innervating what? Which type of cell? Good, skeletal muscle, good. Versus we don't see like which horns?
The lateral horn.
Good, which means that this is a section through the spinal cord, like not through where?
Not
T1 to L2.
Good, or?
The sacral tube.
Exactly, S2 through S4, good. So this is not a section through T1 through L2 or S2 through S4 because we don't see the lateral horns. Okay, good. But if this was a section through like T4, what types of neurons are present in the lateral horn structurally and functionally?
Multipolar neuron
Mhm.
and the autonomic motor neuron.
Right, but what kind of autonomic if you're slicing through T4? T?
Parasympathetic.
Not parasympathetic, but
Sympathetic.
sympathetic, right? Sympathetic is T1 through L2. Sympathetic is thoracolumbar, right? Mm-hmm. Good.
T1 to L2 is parasympathetic. Sympathetic.
Sympathetic. Think of it here. Also, those names. Here, let me just draw it here. So we said, okay, here's the spinal cord. Let me draw it in a different color. Here's the spinal cord, and I don't know. Here's the brain. So T1, L2. So like that's like all of that, right? Then we said S2 through S4. That's like there. The other location for parasympathetic outflow from the central nervous system is not from the spinal cord, but is from the brainstem. So like here. So there are nuclei in the brainstem. So that means that if this is the sympathetic, then that and that is the parasympathetic, because para means next to or alongside, right? So here's the sympathetic nervous system, and then next to or alongside it is the parasympathetic nervous system, right? Based on the location of the nuclei, right? The parasympathetic nuclei are located in S2 through S4 or in the brainstem, right? So that's why it's called, that's why this is called thoracolumbar. That's the other name for it. Thoraco, like the sympathetic nervous system is also called the thoracolumbar division of the autonomic nervous system. And the parasympathetic is also called the craniosacral. So craniosacral, oops. Because sacral for S2 through S4 spinal cord segments, and cranial for the brain, which is in the cranial cavity, right? So yeah, that's all this is really useful to remember. All right, so yeah, we don't see lateral horns here because they're only here in those regions. Okay, good. And then what's the function of the gray commissure?
To connect left and right.
Exactly, to connect left and right spinal cord. Good. What about, okay, there's a, what's this?
Posterior.
Right, the posterior median fissure. What's this?
Anterior median sulcus.
I'm sorry, did I say posterior median fissure? No, it's posterior median sulcus. This one is anterior median fissure. Okay. So in between the posterior median sulcus and the, what are these? Which rootlets?
Posterior.
The posterior rootlets. Good. So in between those two is this chunk of white matter. What is this chunk of white matter called?
Posterior follicular.
Yeah, so posterior funiculus or posterior column or posterior white column, right? Funiculus is singular, funiculi is plural. So this is a posterior funiculus. What kinds of tracts are located in the posterior funiculus? Let's just say ascending tracts, right? So, because it's not only general sensory tracts, it's also visceral sensory tracts. So we can just say sensory tracts, right? Ascending tracts, but there's no descending tracts that we're learning about. Okay, what about this one?
Lateral column.
Good, the lateral column or the lateral funiculus. What kind of tracts are in the lateral funiculus?
Motor and sensory.
Good, motor and sensory, ascending and descending tracts. What about the anterior funiculus? What kind of tracts? Ascending, descending, or ascending and descending?
Ascending and descending.
Good, ascending and descending, good. Okay, all right, so that's everything on here. Any questions?
Can you please repeat what is in the anterior?
Yeah, we're trying to figure out, like, what is the anterior funiculus? Well, it's white matter. White matter is a bunch of axons, myelinated axons. These axons are like ascending and descending.
Right.
So, and bundles of axons are called tracts. So they're called ascending and descending tracts. So there's ascending and descending tracts in the anterior and lateral funiculi, and then only ascending tracts in the posterior funiculi.
And so would that be for, because it's anterior, that would be what, moderate? Or does it matter?
Don't think of it like that. Think of it like descending is motor, right? This funiculus and this funiculus have descending tracts, so they both have motor signals going through them.
And ascending would be the sensory?
Mhm. Yeah, these both also have sensory, and then this one back here is only sensory, right? There are no descending motor tracts in the posterior funiculi. Mhm. That connect to the brain, yeah. All right. All right, so the rest of this looks like, here, let's do this one. Okay. All right, what are these?
No, anterior.
Good, anterior rootlets. Here,
Posterior.
good, posterior rootlets. This,
Anterior.
good, anterior root. What is this thing? Good, posterior root ganglion. And it's within the posterior root. What is this?
Dorsal rami.
Good, the dorsal ramus or posterior ramus here.
The spinal nerve.
Good, the spinal nerve here.
Anterior rami.
Good, anterior ramus. And then Catherine, this is what you were asking about before, where, like, I think it's better to see it.
Yeah,
So,
that's exactly what I was asking about.
mhm. So all of this is sympathetic nervous system. So here, coming off the anterior ramus, there's two little bits here. I don't know if there's I guess they'll let us know. There's two little bits of neural tissue here. This one's more medial, this one's more lateral. And look at the spinal cord. Which matter is more medial?
Gray,
Gray. Which matter is more lateral?
white.
White. So the name of this bit of neural tissue is called the gray communicating ramus, or in Latin, the gray ramus communicans. What's the name of the other one?
White ramus communicans.
Good, the white ramus communicans, or the white communicating ramus. So these are for, like, those sympathetic nerves. Like, remember when we went down nerves and we said that there's cranial and then spinal nerves. Coming off that is the anterior ramus, and then off the anterior rami are sympathetic nerves or parasympathetic nerves. Well, here are the sympathetic nerves, but they have specific names to them, right? This one is called the gray communicating ramus. This one is called the white communicating ramus. What is this thing?
Sympathetic ganglion.
Good, the sympathetic trunk ganglion or sympathetic chain ganglion. They didn't say trunk or chain, but they should, right? Because there are other types of sympathetic ganglia other than this one, right? There are some that are immediately anterior to the vertebral column. So this one you should really say like chain or trunk. The other name is paravertebral ganglion. And then these things coming off the sympathetic ganglion, these are the ones that were called splanchnic nerves. So that's why, what are they called? Yeah, they're called splanchnic nerves. So you might have to know that, you might not, but just know that that's, like, these are sympathetic nerves going to the organs, right? Okay? Hmm? All right.
So sympathetic cells,
Sympathetic is flying.
cells would still, like cell bodies would be in there and on the lateral horn?
Correct. Yeah. So the way let's put some neurons in. So let's just pretend there's a lateral horn here, and there you go. And let's say, because how many neurons are there for the autonomic nervous system? Like, how many lower motor neurons? Like, how many neurons are in the chain from the spinal cord to the effector? Is it 1 or 2? 2, good. So the way that it works is the first one is here, then it can come out, then let's say that the on-ramp is the white communicating ramus, then it goes in here, and so it can synapse, and this one can leave through here, or it can synapse, and this one can like come out, or it can go in and go up, and then synapse at a different level, and then that one can come out. So there's 4 different pathways, and once we do the autonomic nervous system, we'll talk about that more. But for now, I think it's too hard to do it. Yeah, it's too hard to do it right now. Yeah. Sorry, say it again.
I said, yeah, it's already panic attack and overload.
No, yeah, I agree. Especially the autonomic nervous system, it gets really complicated. You need really good like diagrams and visuals and stuff. Yeah, and we only have 20 minutes right now. Yeah, it needs a lot of explanation too and practice. Yep. Do you have a question, Jennifer?
Well, I was just gonna say, so it's like pre-ganglionic and then post-ganglionic, those are the,
Correct.
okay.
Yep, exactly. Good. Okay. All right. Yeah. So let's do some parts of the brain, and then we'll wrap up. So to do that, I think we should understand where does the nervous system come from. Also in your lab manual, there's a page on embryology, basically. So let's talk about it. So what's the name of the Like, what's the first structure of the nervous system called?
Nervous column.
Sorry, say it again.
Nerve column?
Not nerve. Good. The neural tube. Good.
Nerve tube.
Good. And then the neural tube, it, what's the word? Vesiculates. It forms vesicles. And there's two types of vesicles. The first set and then the second set. The first set are called primary vesicles. The second set are called secondary vesicles. There's 3 primary vesicles. Which one is this?
Prosencephalon.
Good. It's called the prosencephalon. Good. This one?
Mesencephalon.
Good. The mesencephalon. This one? Good. The rhombencephalon. Good. And then what's inferior to that?
Spinal.
Spinal cord. Good. Let's do it again. What is this?
Spinal.
Spinal cord. What is this?
Rhombencephalon.
Good. The rhombencephalon. Oops, sorry, I didn't uncover the right one. What about this one?
Mesencephalon.
Good. The mesencephalon. This one?
Prosencephalon.
The prosencephalon. Good. So those are the names. And with these names, the way to remember them, pro is like first, right? Rhomb is like rhombus. And that's a rhombus, right? So keep that in mind because we're going to see how why they named it the rhombencephalon. And then mes is middle, so the middle cephalon, okay? And then what happens is the prosencephalon splits into 2 more, and then the rhombencephalon splits into 2 more. So what's the name of this secondary vesicle?
Telencephalon.
Good, the telencephalon. Good. And then the telencephalon turns into which adult structure?
Diencephalon?
Not the diencephalon, the cerebrum.
Oh, sorry.
Good, the cerebrum. What about this region though? Good, that's the diencephalon. Good. So both of those are derived from the prosencephalon. Sorry, say it again.
That doesn't change the name.
Oh, correct. Yes. Yeah, this name doesn't change. None of these names technically have to change, but they change them because maybe these ones are scary. I don't know. Yeah. What about this region?
Mesencephalon.
Good. The mesencephalon. Like this one. Like you can call it the midbrain, but you can call it the mesencephalon and still be completely correct, right? And then the rhombencephalon splits into 2. Which one is this one? Good, the metencephalon. And what about this one? Good, the myelencephalon. So the way to remember these, like these two, is, well, T is before Y alphabetically. And like the first 3 letters have an M and an E, right? And then also myel sounds like myelin, and that's what the spinal cord is mostly, myelin, right? All those funiculi, that's what they are. So that means that the inferior most portion of the brain stem must be the myelencephalon. Okay. All right, let's do it again, but out of order. What is this one? Good, the metencephalon. What about this one? Good, the telencephalon. What is this?
Spinal cord.
Good, the spinal cord. What is this? Good, the mesencephalon. Here, good, the diencephalon. And this,
That's the myelencephalon.
good, the myelencephalon, because it's closest to the spinal cord, which is mostly myelin. That's also spinal cord. Okay. All right, so we still have to figure out why did they call it the rhombencephalon. So let's go through this chart and we'll answer that question. So, so let's do it again, right? So another name for these primary vesicles, midbrain, forebrain, hindbrain. What's the name of the forebrain? Prosencephalon. What's the name of the hindbrain? Good, the rhombencephalon. What about the midbrain? Good, the mesencephalon. Good. Then the prosencephalon splits into 2. Which one is this? Good, the telencephalon. this one, the diencephalon, good. The mesencephalon turns into what? Good, the mesencephalon. And then the rhombencephalon splits into two. Which one is this? Good, the metencephalon here. Myelencephalon, good. And let's talk about the walls and the spaces that they form. So, well, this is really just like, these are like the adult structures. So what's the name of the telencephalon?
The cerebrum.
The cerebrum. What about the, like, what, the diencephalon forms the what? Good. Everything with thalamus, good. What about the mesencephalon? Good, the midbrain. And then the metencephalon turns into the what? Two. Good, the pons in the cerebellum, good. And then the myelencephalon turns into the what? Good, the medulla oblongata, good. And then within the telencephalon cerebrum is which spaces? Good, the lateral ventricles. And then in the diencephalon is which space? Good, the third ventricle, good. What about in the midbrain? Good, the cerebral aqueduct or the aqueduct of the midbrain. And then what about, this is where, right, okay, good, the fourth ventricle. But it's really like the upper and lower part of the fourth ventricle. So that's where they got the word rhombus from, because if you look at the fourth ventricle in its like adult state, it looks like a rhombus. And if you split it, then this part was derived from metencephalon. This part was derived from the myelencephalon. So I think that's why they named it the rhombencephalon, because it forms the rhombus, which is the fourth ventricle. Okay. All right. All right, any questions on those? All right. All right, so let's talk about, all of these are on the telencephalon only, right? Okay. So, no, I lied. Yeah, this one is actually more than just telencephalon. Okay, what is this? Like, good, the cerebellum, good. What is this? Good, the brainstem, good. And then what is this region of the brainstem? Good, that's the pons. What about this region? Good, the medulla oblongata. So this is a useful thing, is that when you're looking at the lateral brain, the only things that you can see are the pons and the medulla, because the midbrain is up in here, and then the diencephalon is on top of that. Okay, what about, I'm not sure what all of these are. How about, what is this space? Good, the central sulcus. What about this one? Good, the precentral gyrus. Good. Here? Good, the postcentral gyrus. What's the function of the central sulcus? Okay, that's a good one. Separates frontal lobe from parietal lobe. Good. That's probably the best one, actually. Good. Okay, what about function for precentral gyrus?
To allow gray matter to forward.
That's what the gyri do in general. What about, like, what's special about this gyrus specifically, the precentral gyrus? Good, primary motor cortex, right? What does that mean?
That means voluntary control of skeletal muscles.
Exactly, right? So that means that almost all of the skeletal muscles in your body, they are controlled from here, from the precentral gyrus, because it contains the primary motor cortex. Have you guys learned about the homunculus? Here.
I have a question about this funiculus. How deep we need to learn that? Like literally know everything what it controls? Or
No.
just have a vision what controls what?
I think it's just more like the concept of knowing that the body is mapped onto the precentral gyrus. Like, here, let me find a picture.
That's a funky picture too.
It is a funky picture.
Yes, and it's like the more delicate action the organ does, the more like from big of the area.
Like the creepy face on the.
Oh, wait.
That's like those.
Spread out, yeah, that one, yeah.
It's this one, yeah.
It's very creepy.
It does look kind of creepy,
I'm
but
happy they didn't draw genitals because on the sensory one.
they did.
Did they draw it too?
It's right there.
Let's find it out. Oh, they did draw it, okay.
They did, they did.
Never mind, that was where.
It's right here.
There.
So that's, so primary motor cortex within precentral gyrus. So that's what this gyrus is. It's a special gyrus because it contains the neurons that control the toes and the ankle, the knee, the face, the lips and jaw. And the sizes, relative sizes of these parts of the body indicate the innervation of those parts of the body. So the larger the structure, the more it's innervated. So notice how much our hands are innervated because we use our hands for everything, right? Our face, our tongue, our lips, our head, pretty much, right? Head is a very innervated structure, right?
Talking too much, obviously.
Talking a lot, yes. Our tongue, yes, exactly. So,
Is this mirrored on the other side?
No, it's not mirrored because they're different functions.
uh, you mean like
Because
this
is
one and this one?
and
Yeah.
this is
Yes.
sensory.
Mhm.
It's mirrored on,
Yep, yeah, left and right. Yep, good.
Oh, you're talking about only both hemispheres.
yeah.
For the precentral gyrus, yes.
Okay.
Good. Okay, so that's what the precentral gyrus is, right? So that's the special thing about it. It contains the primary motor cortex, and that's the thing that controls all of these muscles in the different locations in the body. Okay. All right, so precentral gyrus. What's the function of the postcentral gyrus, or the significance of the postcentral gyrus? Exactly. So the primary somatosensory cortex. So exactly, right? To all of these regions, right? And then what are the somatosensations?
Pain,
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 temperature, pressure,
property.
touch, proprioception. Good, right? So it's like all of that data from all of these different regions of the body, this is where it goes if you become aware of it, right? Because you can have proprioceptive information that's sent to the central nervous system that is unconscious, you never become aware of. It like goes to your cerebellum and you never really think about it. Versus if it gets here, you know that it's occurring. Yep. All right? All right, so what is this lobe? Good, the frontal lobe. This one? Good, the parietal lobe. This one? Occipital lobe. This one? Temporal lobe. What is this?
What's the one that hides, what's the name of it?
Sorry, no, what is this? What is this space? This is the lateral sulcus.
Oh,
And then what's deep to the lateral sulcus?
insula.
The insula. Good. What's one function of the frontal lobe? Okay. Houses personality. Good. What about the parietal lobe? Mm. Think of it contains the postcentral gyrus, so produces somatosensations, right? Yeah, proprioception. That's a somatosensation. Yes.
What does it mean?
Sorry, say it again.
Where you are in space.
Oh yeah. Proprioception is where is your body in space, like knowing where your limbs are, in space and relative to each other. Okay. What about function for occipital lobe?
Processing and visual information and storing that visual information.
Good. So houses primary visual cortex for processing and storage of visual information. Good. Okay. What about temporal lobe?
Hearing and smelling.
Good. Houses primary olfactory and auditory cortices. Good for hearing and smelling. What about insula?
Memory and taste.
Okay, good. Houses,
Emotions in response to these memories.
there's a lot of one, yeah, there's a lot. So, emotions, processes emotions associated with memory, or memories associated with emotions. Processes gustatory information through the primary gustatory cortex. It also does disgust, right? So it does taste, which is gustatory, right? But it does disgust. So anytime you feel disgust, like when you eat a food or look at a food that's gross or something like that, that's being processed in the insula. So it does gust and disgust, taste and not taste. So those are some functions of the different lobes. Good. Let's do like general function of the cerebellum. Okay, good. Balance. Coordinates body movements. Good. Function for the pons.
Isn't there a word tracts on?
There are tracks here, yes.
Sensory motor tracts, but I
Oh,
don't know.
okay.
Is there a word tract?
Okay, that's a good answer. Houses sensory and motor tracts, yes. Houses centers for breathing. So like you don't think about breathing, that's kind of automatic. So that's being regulated by the pons. It can be regulated by the medulla oblongata. What's another function, general function for medulla oblongata? So regulate the breathing. What other, there's another organ next to the lungs that it regulates. The heart rate, good, the heart, good job.
So cerebellum's for balance.
Mhm. Yeah, balance and coordination. Yep. Yeah, and like motor learning. Okay, so like you do MMA, right, Allie? So it's like anytime you learn a new move, you don't know how to do it first, right? You have to think about it, and then over time it becomes like unconscious. You just do it automatically. That learning occurs here in the cerebellum, right? It stores like that pattern of movement so that you can just use it whenever and not think about it.
And then bell means fight, right? Like war.
Yes, exactly. Yep. Yes, nice. All right, good. All right, yeah, we're not gonna finish. Let's just do one more slide. So let's just identify some of these. What is this space? This is the longitudinal fissure. They said cerebral, you don't have to put cerebral. What's the function of the longitudinal fissure?
Separate the right and left hemispheres.
Separates right and left which hemispheres? Cerebral hemispheres, good. Why do we have to say cerebral hemispheres?
Because there's also cerebellum hemispheres.
Exactly, because there's also cerebellar hemispheres, good. Which lobe?
Occipital?
Not occipital,
Oh, just kidding, that's frontal.
this is frontal, nice, right? This is frontal because this is the what?
Cerebellum.
The cerebellum, and the cerebellum is posterior. What is this?
Oh, this is the.
Good, the optic chiasm,
Okay.
good. What's the optic chiasm do?
That's the cross of the optic nerves.
Good, allows the decussation of the optic nerves, good. The crossing over of the optic nerves, good. Where have you seen that word decussation before?
Pyramids.
Good, the pyramids, good. Which lobe?
This is the temporal.
Good, temporal lobe. What is this?
The pituitary.
Good, the pituitary gland. Oops, only that one. You can also call it the hypophysis. What was the name of the structure within the sphenoid bone, like at the bottom of the cella turcica?
This is the cribriform plate.
Not the cribriform plate,
This is the factory. Oh my
right?
God.
It's called the hypophyseal fossa because the other name for the pituitary gland is the hypophysis, right? Remember the hypophyseal fossa, right? Its function was to house the pituitary gland or the hypophysis. Okay, good. Oh, sorry. What's the function of the pituitary gland?
Puberty.
Hormones.
Okay. Okay, good, right? Okay, good. Puberty, endocrine system, hormones. It's a regulator of other endocrine glands. That's what it does. It's like the master endocrine gland.
It's so tiny.
And it's so tiny, yeah.
So tiny.
No,
Such a huge job.
I know, right? And you can get tumors here, and it can press on your pituitary, and you can have all types of things that happen. Like you can grow too big, or you can not grow at all, or you can not go through puberty, or you can like, you know, have problems with your cortisol, right? Or your thyroid hormone levels, right? All because of this small little gland, yeah. Mhm. All right, okay, last couple ones, let's just identify. What is this? Good, optic nerve, cranial nerve number 2. Which region? Pons. What is this? Good, the medulla oblongata. And what's inferior to that? The spinal cord. Nice, good. Cervical spinal cord, sure. Okay, all right.